Today, I'm going to do a little video on this DeWalt thickness plater. Had this for about a year. It's in my shop. Not daily use, but it gets used pretty much every weekend and on some of my actual construction projects. It's, to say the least, heavy, but I don't think you're going to get a light one. Alright, firstly I want to go over some of the pros of this, and then we'll go over the cons, and then we'll run some boards through it, and we'll see what the finish is like in both the high and low gear. So some of the cool features on this that I like is that it's got an adjustable depth that you can set it to stop at. My last set that I ran through here was at 1/4 inch, but all you've got to do is turn this dial, and you can adjust it 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 1.5 inch, down to 1/8. And there's a pin underneath here that you can adjust to calibrate this. Secondly, we've got a 2-speed gearbox, and you're only supposed to change this while it's running, but this will give you a finer finish and a rougher finish, coarser, faster machining. You've got a removal gauge which will tell you how much you're about to take off as you put your piece in just before it hits the knives or the rollers. It hits a little gauge here and it rolls up on that, and it gives you an indication of how wide your board is, how much you should be taking off in a pass. Then over here we've got the depth adjustment. It's got a big handle. This is chain driven. I think it's chain driven through there. Not terribly important, but it's got adjustments on all 4 corners, and that's meant to keep everything parallel, plumb, even, moving in the same space. It's got a big handle. It's fairly easy to turn. It's fairly quick to turn it. So it's easy to make adjustments, and then, you know, every pass you go through, you just pull this handle, 1 turn, 1/2 turn, depending on how much you're trying to take off, and you know how rough your wood is that you're putting through it. These are all adjustable as well in case something gets out of adjustment. Next, you've got your power switch. I'm not going to turn it on, it's not hooked up to the dust extractor yet. And a reset button for the internal breaker that it's got in case you overload it. That's going to be on one of the cons I talk about later on with this. Millionthly, it comes with onboard storage for the Torx key to take the cover off, so you can access the blades, check chain tightness, and so forth. It's got 2 handles for carrying it, which you can also wrap the cord around. It's pretty convenient. This cover comes off here, and this is the chain drive for the feed rollers. And this is the chip ejection. I haven't made a proper coupling to go to this, but suffice to say, you can actually hook a dust extractor up to this, and I use Festool vacuum down here with the CT separator, just so that I can clear the abundance of chips that this makes in a quick enough time, which this does make a fair amount of wood chips while you're using it. I think that covers the features and the pros. Now the cons. This thing is heavy. I mean, like 92 pounds. It's heavy. And that's a pro and a con, because that's probably a sign that it's a fairly well-built machine. It's a good thing, but moving it around the shop, I really need to make a cart that, it's on one over there, it's just not the best cart. I should fix up that cart so I can just roll it in front of everything here and run boards through it and then put it back. The chip ejector really should have some kind of bag attachment you can use with it. I'm not sure if they do. It didn't come with one. I know some of the other ones do, or it should be able to, it should have an attachment so you can hook it up to a vacuum. I know most vacuums won't hold the amount of chips that this makes while it's running out, but it's also force fed, so you really just need it to be able to put them into a container, like a bag, or in this case the CT Cyclone that I'm using, and it does pick up most of those chips and keeps it from making a mess. If you're not using a dust extractor or some kind of chip collection with this, you're going to make a terrible mess, and it takes a while to clean up. It throws chips about 15 feet, more than likely all the way back to the end of my shop. It's pretty power hungry. This is rated as 120 volt, 15 amp, normal duty portable planer, but it routinely pops the breakers in my shop, which are brand new and 20 amp without a dust extractor running on the same circuit. So it's not something that I would recommend you using on a 15 amp breaker unless you have nothing else on that breaker. Like, I generally have other stuff plugged in and it's not running, but there's still draw from it just because it's plugged in. So I'd recommend having a standalone circuit for it that's 20 amps or 15 if you really have to, but 20 would be better. And still expect it to pop the breaker when you turn it on because it doesn't have soft start, it's just full on. And depending on where it's sitting in the motor, that can pop the breaker on a high demand tool like this. So few downsides, nothing too major, few features, and those are things I really like. It works well, and we're going to show that now. I'm going to cut some of these boards down to just over the length I need them, and then I'm going to run them through, and you can see what the quality of finish is like in both the gears. And as well, before I do that, I'm still on the first side of the knives. They are completely reversible, so you can flip them before you have to replace them. I've had this for about a year. There's a nick in one of them, and you can see it when it comes out, which isn't really that big of a deal. Just live with it until they're worse, and I lose quality of finish, and then I'll switch them around. You can also buy aftermarket helical heads for this that use carbide cutter inserts that will give you a much better finish and make this work a lot more efficiently, but that's about doubling the price of one of these, and I just don't use it enough to need one. If I was going to do that, I would probably buy a larger, wider one, because this will do, it says 12 inches, but it really does 13. But at that width, it's not that efficient. I'm generally running about 5-6 inches through it, and it does a fairly good job with that. All right, I'm going to mill up some cut down some boards and get them ready to run through here and set up the dust extraction on this, and then we'll see what the finish is like. All right, and so just before I run these through, it's always a good idea to wear hearing protection, safety glasses, and a dust mask when you're doing this, because there is still going to be dust that comes out of this, and if something goes wrong, you definitely don't want to be on the receiving end of anything that flies out of this machine. It's also very loud. And there's the breaker. Here you can see the finish from the planer on a finished piece. I don't know if I'd call that blowout. It's just a weird piece of grain in there that wasn't smooth. There is a little bit of snipe on this piece. You can see it in the light there. That line is called snipe, and that is because I don't have an outfeed table that's the right height. When this is coming out the end of it, it tips up, and that hits the blade just a little bit. It's not that big a deal because I'm still going to sand all these once they're joined together. This piece is pretty bad with snipe, but this side's all right. I don't want to go any thinner on these, even though I had planned to, because there's a crack in this piece and I don't want to have that pull out into the knives. So these are my finished pieces. I'm going to rip them in the table saw to the right width, and then I'm going to join them up, and they're going to be a divider for a piece of furniture I'm working on right now.